So next up, podcast listeners, 1 million voters switch parties. In the Epic Times, over 1 million voters switched to the GOP in a warning for the Democrats. At least 1 million voters across 43 states have switched to the Republican Party in the past year alone, according to analysis released by the Associated Press just yesterday. The AP said that it compiled ballot intentions to make the finding, noting that the shift is happening more frequently in the suburbs. Ha-ha! Over the past year, far more people are switching to the GOP across suburban counties, from Denver to Atlanta, as well as Pittsburgh and Cleveland, it said. The GOP also gained ground in counties around medium-sized cities, such as Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Raleigh, North Carolina, Augusta, Georgia, and Des Moines, Iowa. The data were sourced by political research firm L2 is the name of it, which provided information on 1.7 million voters who likely switched their party affiliations across 42 states. Ladies and gentlemen, this is great news for the Republican Party, obviously very bad news for the Democrat Party. But we know that the Democrat Party always likes to find different ways of getting people to vote. In the Daily Caller, a court strikes down New York City law allowing non-citizens to vote. Since when are non-citizens allowed to vote to begin with? In New York. The New York Supreme Court ruled Monday in favor of a lawsuit against giving non-citizens the right to vote in local elections. So New York State passed a law allowing folks to vote in New York City, and New York City passed it as well, to vote in local elections. And those individuals were illegal aliens. There was a lawsuit, and the New York Supreme Court ruled in favor of the lawsuit, saying, yeah, you can't let people who are here illegally vote. So that's really good news. The Republican National Committee sued New York City Mayor Eric Adams, the New York City Council, and the New York City Board of Elections in January for passing a law allowing non-citizens to vote. So you just heard me talk about how 1 million people across the United States who are citizens changed their party affiliation to Republican. And then what do you have? You have New York City, the brand new mayor that people say is moderate, passing a law that he signs that says now illegals can vote. And if that isn't enough, we also have the problem on the Republican side. Representative Liz Cheney is soliciting votes from Democrats. So Representative Liz Cheney for Republican of Wyoming, is starting to ask Democrats to switch parties and vote for her as she faces a tough primary battle with a candidate endorsed by former President Donald Trump. Cheney's campaign website recently added a section that asks and answers questions about voting. It notes that voters must be registered as a Republican to vote for Cheney in the August 16 primary. That's because, Wyoming has closed primaries. That is to say, if you're a Republican, you can only vote in the Republican primary. And if you're a Democrat, you can only vote in the Democrat primary, all of which is on August 16th. Quote, how do I change my party affiliation to register as a Republican so I can vote for Liz? The website states. In other words, Liz Cheney is soliciting Democrats in her state of Wyoming to change their party affiliation for the sole purpose of making sure that Liz Cheney, a Democrat, stays in power. Can't make that stuff up. Namely, that Liz Cheney, who by all intents and purposes at this point in time is a Democrat, but probably really always has been part of the Uniparty, has decided that she wants to hang on to power. And the only way she can hang on to power is to send out mass mailings, as well as put on her website to Democrats that please change your party affiliation. Because if you do change your party affiliation to Republican Democrats, then you can keep me in office, because let's face it, it's going to be a real Republican that gets elected if I lose. That's exactly what Liz Cheney is saying. She's admitting she's not really a Republican and that a real Republican will ultimately prevail unless enough Democrats switch parties and get her into office because she's really a Democrat. And this is what I would like to call it. I think I'm going to do a podcast about this in the near future, ladies and gentlemen. But I like to call this, it's really kind of the great Republican purge this year. 2022 is really like the year of the great Republican purge. And it's the great Republican purge because it's really the year that I think Republicans are starting to focus more on whether the person representing them in Republican districts is truly a conservative and a Republican, or whether the person that represents them as a Republican is really a Democrat, planning and kind of masquerading as a Republican. That is to say, they come home and they say, oh, the right things. And then they go to Annapolis or they go to Washington or they go to your home state capital. And what do? They do the opposite of what they tell you. And I have to say this, all you need to do is look at the CPAC ratings of your local legislative candidates. So in your state legislature, those candidates are rated by CPAC. And at the federal level, they are rated by CPAC. Please look at that, because if you were to do so, you'll see whether the person that you support is really a conservative and therefore should be in the Republican Party, or whether they are actually a Democrat and just using the Republican Party to get elected, like Liz Cheney. And this is important stuff because 2022 is, and I'm going to do a podcast on this, I can promise you, it really is the year of the great purge in the Republican Party, where you have a kind of a market maker in the party, and that's Trump, no doubt about it, okay? And Trump is calling out the people who are really not interested in making America a constitutional republic again. They're only interested in power, and they're only interested in enriching themselves, and they really have no real conservative principles. In fact, they have no principles whatsoever. And you know who they are, okay? But increasingly, there are more of these people that are being outed, like Liz Cheney. And they're being outed by not just Trump, but by their challengers who are saying, well, wait a minute, why did you vote for that bill? You know, why did you vote for a budget that that put the United States into a situation where we have unsustainable inflation? These are good questions to ask. It's high time that they're asked, and I'm thrilled that there are Republicans across the country who are running as Republicans, but as conservatives as well, and calling out their opponents.